Hello everyone, and thanks for tuning into the Spring 2025 forecast from GavsWeatherVids. So here we go, it's time to bring you another LRF long-range forecast from GWV, GavsWeatherVids, and this is the Spring 2025 forecast. So I do four long-range forecasts a year, so always an exciting day at GavsWeatherVids when we release a long-range, and I shall get on with your Spring 2025 forecast for you in a moment. Just to say back first, video sales our 6 a.m. UK weather forecast. We've got the sunny roundup, and we're going to be live at 6 p.m. later on today. Now, please like, share, and subscribe on all of today's videos and content. Thanks so much, everyone, for doing that. Thanks to Richard. Thanks to Ricardo for the Spring 2025 forecast gift. I love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much, Rick. Okay, let's crack on then with your Spring 2025 forecast. And the first thing we're going to look at is spreadsheet from Terry. So here we go. This is showing our leading years from the spring update. Shorter season this year, as always, for the spring forecast. So we've only had 2 months of this rather than the usual 3 months we do for the other seasons. But nevertheless, we've still got quite a few things to look at here. So we have got our methodology up here, so like we've got solar matches, December England Wales rainfall, QBO decreasing westerly phase, ENSO just bare, January data just bare, December data just bare, autumn data just bare, back from in the earlier updates. The years are on the side, so we have got 1950 as our first year, and we come all the way down to 2024 as our final year, and then a number of hits in this column. And, you know, so, for example, 1950 has a hit just here for England, Wales autumn rainfall, but only has one hit for 1950. So that particular year can be discarded, but there's not enough of a hit rate for that to be relevant for our lean years. Some years don't have any hits. For example, 1955 didn't appear at all during this season of spring updates, but some are doing rather better. So, for example, we've got 1958 here showing up as one of the leading years. That had 4 hits, so it came out on top. Just bare, just there, just bare, and just bare as well. Turned up 4 times within our spring updates and methodology. At 3.5 hits, we've got 2 years turning up, 1968, 1969. So those 2 years are going to be included as well. 1962, that turned up 3 times, but just not quite enough to be included within our leading years. We didn't see 1966 at all, and 1965 with 2 hits, that one is discarded and thrown in the bin as well. We had 1989 and 1990 turning up with 1.5 hits, but again, not enough of a hit rate to show up. However, a better year was 1986. That year showed up 4 times. So you get the idea, you know, but how we're doing this, how we're working out which are the leading analog years. And so let's go through to this from Schreier. This is our table showing us what the leading analog years are. So we have got, with 3.5 hits, 1968. And again, with 3.5 hits, got 1969. With 4 hits, we've got 1958. We've got 1981, again, with 4 hits. And we've got 1986 with 4 hits, 2002 with 4 hits, and 2013 with 4 hits as well. They are our leading analog years for this year's GavsWeatherVids Spring 2025 forecast. Thank you so much to Terry for a spreadsheet. Thank you so to Schreier for the table. Hashtag Team Gav doing an awesome job. Of course, thanks so to Ricardo for our spring updates gift. Right, let's move on then. Have a look at the data. So this is how 1968 is looking with 3.5 hits. It's an unsettled spring with low pressure through the north and west Europe. Generally quite a mildish spring, I think, but quite unsettled. We've also got 1969 showing up as well with 3.5 hits, low pressure in from the Atlantic, high pressure up here. That for us a very cold February. I think it does have some cold weather through the earlier part of the spring, but otherwise it's just quite an unsettled spring. I think quite a nice spring later on. And then with 4 hits, we've got 1958, which is a very cold spring, especially early on, with a big blocking area of high pressure towards Greenland, low pressure here, winds coming in from a cold north or northeasterly direction. And again, with 4 hits, we've got 1981. This has a very wet March. Of course, has the famous, infamous late April snowstorm in the final week of April 1981. It's an unsettled spring, but quite mild despite that snowstorm that occurs in late April. We've got 1986, which is quite a cold and wet spring. Again, with 4 hits, plenty of low pressure out to the Atlantic and into the west of Europe. And we've got 2002. It's probably the best spring within the whole of the package, really. So this one with high pressure up towards Scandinavia, low pressure out to the west. That's quite a nice spring. It has a reasonable amount of dry and often quite warm weather. It's the one spring, I think, that we can say, you know, if you like something a bit drier and warmer, that's the one to be rooting for in 2002. That said, it does have unsettled weather at times. Don't get wrong, with some, quite protracted spells of unsettled weather. But overall, that is the best spring within our spring forecast analogues. And then finally, we've got 2013. Of course, this is a very, very, very cold spring with a big block again around Greenland, low pressure through the west of Europe and winds coming in from the northeast. Has a very, very cold second half to March with widespread snow and ice, and that actually carries on into April. Frozen Easter in 2013, but very, very unusual, I have to say. So although that is, you know, within our leading years, in fact, it's one of the leading years with 4 hits, I would rate that, you know, and weight it at a lower end of the range, because it's a very, very unusual spring. And also excuse me, there are a few things about spring 2013 that were very unique for the time that we're not reproducing now, such as had a big midwinter SSW in January 2013. That's not the case now, and also a very different solar situation to where we currently are as well. So I would rate or weight 2013 a little bit lower. Nevertheless, it does show up as one of our leading years. Alright, let's pull all that together then. So this is how all Marches combine with 3.5 hits or more. Basically all Marches looking like this. So an unsettled signal for the Marches with below outside low pressure part right over top of UK and Ireland. There's a bit of a blocking signal around Greenland. I'm not sure it's a tremendously cold signal, but does look like a very unsettled signal anyway. All Aprils combined, well, probably not quite as unsettled, but could be a little bit of a cooler signal due to the ridge up here and the trough being more towards the south and the east. And so for the Aprils, we could be bringing in the winds a little bit more from the north and from the northeast, actually, in a lot of these Aprils, which is a colder wind direction, but not quite as unsettled, probably. And then the Mays, well, not very good for the Mays. All Mays combined with all the years scoring 3.5 hits or more come out like that. Low pressure is set up right over top of the UK and Ireland. Very unsettled, potentially very wet signal for the Mays. Right, well, if we have a look at all springs combined for the years with 3.5 hits or more, obviously it's going to be an unsettled signal with low pressure in control both in March and April. A little bit less so in March and May, a little bit less so in the April, but overall for the springs, very unsettled signal. And in terms of the temperature, well, a colder than average spring is indicated here. So all years combined for temperature for the springs look like that. That could be a lot to do with 2013. That's a very cold spring, really cold in March 2013. Of course, that could be skewing things a little bit. We have to keep that in mind. And then in terms of precipitation, well, it's sort of a wetter than average spring to our south on average, and a drier than an average spring away to north. So near normal for precipitation for all springs combined with the leading years. Now, if we narrow things down, just look at the years scoring 4 hits or more, and that is 1958, 1981, 1986, 2002, and 2013, we come out like this, still very unsettled, but the marches, all marching combined with low pressure in off the Atlantic, blocking up towards Greenland as well. There's a bit of a cold potential for those marches, but the main thing I would assume is that this is a very, very unsettled signal. The Aprils, again, similar to what we just saw, really below average heights tending to become more focused to the south, to the southeast, above average heights out in the Atlantic. The winds tend to be coming in from more of a north or northeasterly direction. And then again for the Bays, it's a similar signal with that deep low centred right over top UK and Ireland, looking quite alarming there for a very unsettled May, if we believe it. And far as all springs combined are concerned, that's how it looks for years scoring 4 or more. Actually, there is no more than 4. So for all the springs that score 4 hits, unsettled with low pressure part over the west of Europe. It's still a below average signal for temperature as well, by the way, with those springs. Again, that could be 2013 skewering things a little bit, but I think a lot of the other springs are probably quite cool. About 2002 is warmer. Precipitation actually turns a bit wetter just out to our west, a wet spring signal for Ireland there, for example. So generally not a tremendously good signal for anybody who wants a warm and dry spring, as I'm sure you would have realised as we've gone through the spring updates, have been very much favouring the unsettled side of things and sometimes colder side of things as well. But anyway, that's how the data is coming out. So we're going to have a little break there and you digest what you've just seen, and then when we return in about a second, I shall give you a GavsWeatherVids Spring 2025 forecast. So I shall see you in a moment. Okay, we're back and we're ready to deliver the Spring 2025 forecast to you from GavsWeatherVids. We've gone through the leading years, we've seen what the leading years are, gone through the spreadsheet and checked out the analogues. It's now time, the analogues for those leading years. It's now time to deliver our forecast. I think we've got to say it's going to be an unsettled spring. I don't think we do anything other based on those analogues. So I think we are expecting a pretty changeable spring, lots of, week by week and even day by day variation coming through. That said, you probably don't get it from the analogue, but it won't be a complete and total washout from beginning to end. I think there will be periods of drier weather, and they might be more focused sort of later into March and also through April as well. But I think the unsettled weather, so I think what happens is probably start off with a very unsettled pattern for this spring. The first half of March, I would imagine, is going to be quite unsettled. Then we perhaps progress to something a bit drier but a bit colder maybe into the second half of March, and this is particularly pivotal for the SSW. If we get a sudden stratospheric warming event through the first half of March, let's say the second week of March, but I would anticipate like the third or fourth week of March is where we probably progress to a drier but also a colder potentially pattern, and that could last like into April. So I think there's a window here of quite cold weather, but more about that in a moment. So the unsettled periods I think like to be the first half of March, and then probably coming back when we get into May. There's a very strong signal for an unsettled May here, unfortunately. So we might be in for it a little bit when we get to May. So I would imagine that if we get like a period, let's say a 4-week period of drier weather from the middle of March to the middle of April, or maybe lasting throughout most of April actually, then we probably, despite the wet start and the wet end of the spring, we probably come out quite close to average precipitation. So I would say that overall the season probably averages out quite close to average precipitation, but when it's wet, it could be very wet, if you get what I mean, particularly so in May. As far as temperature is concerned, that's a little bit more difficult, really, because the unsettled weather early March probably could be quite mild, and the unsettled weather in May might not be overly cold either, especially if the nights are dull and wet. It could actually be quite warm and humid. I think there could be a colder period within the middle part of a spring, though, that might pull the overall temperature down. So again, overall, I would say average temperatures probably against 91 to 2020 for precipitation. But again, that will mask probably quite a lot of variation and quite a lot of rather extreme swings through this season. So, of course, spring is a transitional season, going from winter to summer. So you expect, quite dramatic swings in temperature and whatnot. It's been that kind of winter as well. I expect, the dramatic temperature swings that we've seen through the winter will probably continue into the spring as well. So whether we're slightly above average, slightly below average temperature, I don't think we'll be deviating too far from the long-term average this spring. Very unsettled, as I say, changeable spring, and I think there is a chance that we could get quite a protracted cold period within the middle part of the spring if we pull off the SSW in early March. So the temperature side of things, and whether we get that drier and colder period through the middle of the spring, I think that is that's very much down to the sudden stratospheric warming event. If we do get the SSW, whether we get a tropospheric response to that, in a lot of ways it would be easier to give this spring forecast. This reasonable spring forecast is delivered with quite low confidence, to be honest. It would be easier to give this spring forecast if we managed to get an SSW in the winter. So if we'd had it in January or early February, then I'd be more confident about, what sort of tropospheric response we might get into the spring. Because you don't always get a tropospheric response to an SSW. For example, 2022 had an SSW in March. There wasn't really a tropospheric response. Actually, it's a very warm spring, and the very hot summer pattern got going in May of 2022. Whether that's related to the March SSW, of course, who knows. So there is a big caveat about this spring forecast, and that is any potential sudden stratospheric warming event that occurs through the first half of March, and what the tropospheric response to that may or may not be. However, we're going, on what the most likely scenario is. I think the most likely scenario is that we get an SSW probably in the second week of March. We get a tropospheric response to that probably later in the third week through the fourth week of March, probably lasting into the first and possibly second weeks of April. If that happens, then we could expect some drier but also some potentially cold weather. And within the analogues, there is that signal for April to be a little bit drier as well. If we don't get the SSW, if we don't get a tropospheric response, then we may still get that drier April, but it might turn out to be rather warmer. And if that happens, of course, then the season comes out with above average temperatures. So, there's lots of ifs and buts about this spring forecast, and I'm delivering it with really quite low confidence, I have to say. So I've just gone with what I think is the most likely, a hunch, basically, I think is most likely to happen this season. But as I said, there's a lot of uncertainty about it. No, we'll have to wait and see. We'll verify this forecast when we get to the beginning of June. It'd be interesting to see how it works out. I think we have got the potential for some quite cold weather, really, with the spring in the central part of it, in the middle part of it. But, again, it just depends whether we pull off that SSW. It has seen, a strong blocking signal at times through this winter that's just gone, or we're coming to the end of, but never able to sustain. So given the way blocking has tried to occur through this winter, I've got a feeling if we get an SSW, the tropospheric response will probably towards, trying to lock in northern blocking for a sustained period, based on what's happened through the winter. But, that's just my hunch, and it will be interesting, as I say, see how it works out. So in the final analysis, we're going for average temperatures set against 61 to 1990, No, set against 91 to 2020. When you're talking about Gav, and we're also going for average precipitation, but that does mask a lot of intra-month and week-by-week variation, and it's going to be a much more interesting spring, I think, than like the headline average temperatures, average precipitation. Average temperatures, average precipitation. You know, it's going to be a much more interesting spring, much more interesting season than the headline would imply, I think. So that's it. That's the GavsWeatherVids spring forecast. That's the best I can do for you. It's going to be interesting to see how this all works out. And as I say, we will verify the spring 2025 forecast at the beginning of June. We're coming to the end of the winter, which means we've got to verify the winter forecast in early March. I don't think them too badly with the winter forecast, but I say more about that when we do the verification. And we're moving on to summer updates, but we're going to have next week off, so no long-range update next week. And then the week after that, which I think is going to be the 9th of March, that's when we'll have the first summer update, and then we'll be doing summer updates for you right the way through to the end of May. Summer forecast will be released the last Sunday of May, which I'm not sure what that is, but I'll let everybody know. Right, well, thank you so much to Richard for our lovely spring updates forecast gift, our spring forecast gift. Thank you so much, Rich. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Very cute little birdie, isn't it? Oh, love it. A little bundle of fluff. Little bundle of joy. Yeah, thank you so much, Richard. And thanks so much to Shryan, thanks so much to Terry as well, hashtag Team Gav, done an amazing job with the spring updates and, of course, with the spring forecast as well. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much to the Freaksome. Foursome with me, but I'm the smallest part of it all. Right, well, we'll end it there then. So that's your spring forecast. Now we've got the GavsWeatherVids sunny roundup for February coming up at about 1 p.m-ish, and then we're live at 6 p.m. So if you've got any questions about this forecast, and also if you want to join the live stream, then we'll be live at 6 p.m. We'll do our 10 to 14 day, and we'll do it for you live. It's going to be an interesting stream. I shall see you a little bit later on for that one then, but for this one, that's all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you with more very, very soon. The GavsWeatherVids Spring 2025 forecast, that's all for now, and thanks for watching.